So I want to say that I've really all day I've been looking forward to this,
Cool.
and it doesn't mean that I haven't had a bit of a like, what are we gonna talk about? But I'm just thinking that it's gonna be a good time together, and I thank you for being a part of this and allowing me to be a part of this conversation. It's gonna be good. I know.
I think
And
so.
so, anything that in terms of your expectations that I should know going into this?
Nope. Letterbox.
Okay. Well, first thing I just wanted to say is, Zayden, I haven't really known you that long. Um, I'm not quite sure the exact moment that I met you,
I know
but
when it was.
you do?
It was at the LGBT summit.
Well, that
That
was
was
okay.
the
That
first
was
time I met you.
okay.
Yep.
All right. So, and that's what I was going to say, that most of my knowing you has been in a public setting. So,
Yep.
I feel like, when I think of Zayden, I think of this ball of energy coming into the room and that smile, and and I was in awe about how you were able to be with middle school and high school students, in for extended periods of time, and they were having a great time, and it was really engaged, and so I was like, wow, who is this person? um, but so I guess my first question of you is, Zayden, since I don't know much about you, so tell me about yourself. I mean, where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? What kinds of career trajectory did you have? Um, do
How
you
much
mind?
time do we got here?
We can go all night.
I should have you come to one of my speeches sometimes because I do speak. Well, I speak in recovery community settings or in school settings sometimes, telling my personal story because I am a recovered alcoholic as well, and it's a huge part of my story and even my coming to find out my sexuality and my identity, gender identity. So like I've lived here my entire life. I'm 35 years old and never lived anywhere else. So North Dakota is all I've known. I started drinking at 10, so I started drinking at a really young age. But I also um like okay, so how do I want to try to give you a small quick synopsis of like my quick upbringing because I didn't know until my fourth year sober. So I got sober. I started drinking at 10. I got sober when I was 29. So I'll be celebrating 6 years clean and sober this month. I didn't know until like my fourth year of sobriety how much my sexual orientation, and I also didn't know my gender identity um, was a thing, I guess, until it was actually the summit that I really learned about non-binary, and I was like, oh my gosh, that makes sense to me. And I had been kind of thinking about um like my gender identity because like when I was really little, I knew I wanted to be a boy, like because I wanted to do the boy things, like I wanted to play ninjas and guns and I didn't want dolls and like so and everything was very gendered back then and back then isn't even that long ago. You know what I mean? And it still is today. And like I got put in, I don't remember this, but I got put in gender counseling because when they'd say all the boys stand up, I would stand up too. And it wasn't because I thought I was a boy, it was because I didn't want to do the girl things. But like my mom is actually the one who tells me this history because it's been blocked out of my memory for some reason. Like a lot of elementary, I remember being teased because I looked like a boy. I had, the haircut. I had a rat tail that was braided. My mom made it braided to make it more girly. Like a rat tail can be girly. I don't know. And I remember learning about, the way I grew up learning gender was women are weaker, women don't cry. Um, women are sex objects. I mean, women cry, men don't cry, excuse me. And women tend to be, you know, they're the weaker sex, and they're all emotional and whatever, and guys are more like, so even just like personality characteristics became gendered to me, and like boys are this and girls are that, and I'm like, I don't like being this. And so, you know, from a very, very young age, like as soon as I hit elementary school, I feel like I didn't fit in because I couldn't play with the boys and I couldn't play with the girls. I know, like when I'd play with the boys at recess and something happened, I'd cry, and the teacher would be like, well, you can't cry if you're going to want to play with the boys. Like, you know, there's so many messages that got sent to me. And so you know, I knew that I was gay. I mean, I was assigned female at birth, and I identified as woman because that's what they told me I was. And you know, so, and I knew I was a lesbian, and that was easier. Like at second grade, I knew I was already, and asked my parents if that was okay, and they're like, oh, we'll love you, whatever. But they said those words, but their actions didn't match their words either. So I felt I was black sheep in my family. I was unaccepted. I turned into like society. I turned to toxic masculinity as a female growing up to try to fit in with the guys, and also because that's the view that was formed for me of how women were due to social institutions, even my family, I would say, unbeknownst to them. So drinking, 29, got sober, through the 12-step program, and did some more soul searching, and then ended up going to therapy. And I didn't have a LGBT therapist. I would not recommend someone go to her if they were LGBT. She's a trauma therapist. She does well, but she's not trained, you know, so she'll say things that like otherwise I think anyway, that's not important. But that in that time of figuring out my core self and who I was and being true to myself, that I finally be like, you know what? I guess I'm transgender. And it was really hard and like not something I wanted to accept. And like, but hearing what non-binary was, because I don't want to fit. Okay, now I'm going to go in. I might be answering some other questions here, and I'm just going to go.
That's fine. You know.
Yeah. So yeah, you just know I'm really long-winded, Barry. Like let's go to like hours later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a little into like when I heard non-binary, because like when I was a little kid, somehow I knew that like you had to have surgeries or something to become a man, and like I didn't want to do that. And I don't know how the heck I knew that from a very young age of like elementary school. And that was like the only options, and I didn't want to do that. And so I had only heard about genders being told in the binary form as like you're either male or female, and like that's it, you know. Then I'm also vice president for Dakota Outright, and we do LGBT 101 training, and they had it at the summit that year too. And you know, it's mentioned in there how you're literally assigned a sex at birth, and it's female or female according to how long that is, you know. And then and if you're in the other place, we're just not really sure, so we'll call you, you know. So like that opened up my mind, like, oh, there's more than one gender. And then I heard about the umbrella term, how you know, it's not just here, but there's a spectrum and the gender unicorn. So when I heard non-binary, I was like, because I've lived my life as a female for I don't know how much of my life, and I don't know how I can go to live another gender as a male when like I just feel like the definitions of female and male are such a social construct. And it's just a matter of perception and views, and it's different for everyone. And like if we want to try to put one of those I don't want to fit into those boxes ever again. And like I could never take away what usually is perceived as feminine qualities and like masculine qualities, you know, like because we've genderized such things as like emotions or feelings, like those are for girls, you know, and that's not right. And I don't know, that'll get me into a whole other rant of like how, you know, most these things that we've come up with are just defined by society, because if you go into different societies, there's different genders and it's already normal, you know what I mean? So it's just like, what really is reality then and whatever. So, but then there's the caveat of like trying to fit in good old North Dakota as a transgender person and my family who really doesn't get it, you know, so I just, well, you know, I look like a guy and this is the way I like to look, but I won't identify as strictly male because I don't want to. I don't feel like I fit it. It's a social construct. Like, it doesn't define me. I'm just a human and I just want to be a human. Like, is that so much to ask? I don't know. So that's that's in a gist non-binding for me specifically though.
Which is the most important answer for me, what you put at the end for you, because that really, you really helped really drill it down to the most basic of how, you know, so one of the things that I have taken to heart in actually these last 2 weeks was that whole idea of don't, you know, it's lazy to expect other people to educate you on you know, whether it's race or gender identity or sexual orientation, and you know, I have to take on some responsibility for my own awareness and education. And at my late stage in life, I'm just scratching the surface with all of this. And what I find as I'm doing my educating is the last week, I've been thinking about having this conversation with you because I think, so revelation, I'm a social worker by profession.
Are
So,
you? Oh, I didn't even talk about what I do for work.
yeah,
You
we'll
asked
get
me
back.
that. I'm sorry I didn't answer.
No. You went to what was important to you in terms of describing yourself. So that's cool. That's really, really good. But as a social worker, I mean, I think this is why I was drawn there, was because to me, it's all about relationships. It's really, you know, I can read about groups of people and I do all that, and it doesn't sink in really well. I can't regurgitate what I've learned, but if I had a conversation with a person, then it's like boom, boom, boom. Okay, I'm getting this. Now I may not, but then to be careful that I don't extrapolate it to a whole group based on, you know, saying, well, Zayden told me, so therefore, but so it's that kind of trajectory that I am on. I have a real specific question, and you've already talked about that. When we talked earlier, you know, I was asking you to help me unwrap the concept of non-binary, and you really have. You did it then, and you're doing it now, and I think it's going to continue to be unwrapped. And I may never arrive at a total understanding, and that's okay, right? You know, as long as I'm just accepting that there is this concept out there. But I'm interested in a couple things. One is I was so thrilled to hear the impact that the LGBTQ summit had on your life story, because it was kind of an experiment. It was like, hey, we should do this, and you know, we put this together, and you know, I've been involved in planning for a lot of things where afterwards you go, well, we won't do that again. But to hear that there's been stories of people saying it meant something to me was very exciting, gratifying. But I'm interested to know that as you've gone through and you've already talked about this a bit through your life, but particularly maybe in the last 2 years, you know, what has been the most, and I'm putting this on people, but what has been the most painful way that people have responded to you in your journey? And I'm going to have a flip side to that question, but you know, for me to learn as to how can I be I don't know that I like the word ally anymore. I'm not sure what that means, but if I can be a person in relationship, that's what I like. To be in relationship with you in an authentic way. I learn by what has been painful for you and how people may have responded to you. And then the flip side will be what's been particularly, have you had these unexpected moments of joy along the way? But we'll start with the painful side. If that's
Sure.
something that you're wanting, if you even want to talk about.
You know what's the great part about you asking me that question is that I actually really have to think about it. And I think that's a good thing because um, to not just have like, oh, there's been so many painful events and stuff like that. However, I work very hard to not take things personally. That what other people think about me is none of my business. Not that I ever do these things perfectly, but it's ways of life that I've learned to live in recovery in ways that keep me in peace. Because as someone who grew up very different from everyone in their family, from most of the people in North Dakota, transgender people aren't that prevalent, and I didn't even know I was one of them. But I was, a lesbian, and that's not prevalent and whatever. So, I've had this sense of not belonging and not fitting in for a very long time. And, I worked into fitting into society as a lesbian, and now I have to come out as a transgender person. But not only am I going to be transgender, but I'm going to be non-binary. Can I get any more separate and different? The first time that somebody said something hurtful to me, or she said, something about why would you want to do that to your body? God made you perfect already, or something like that. Like she brought I wouldn't even recognize this lady as like Christian per se. But she was like talking about I'm mutilating my body, and why would I destroy God's handiwork? And like it hurt because it was someone close to me that I didn't expect someone to say that to me.
Yeah.
She also said, when I said they pronouns about someone else, she's like, well, that's stupid. That doesn't make sense. Like that one bothers me. The immediate negative reaction to they pronouns. However, I understand a little bit. I understand because when I first heard it a long time ago, I thought it was silly too. Like it hasn't been as bad as I thought it was going to be, I will say.
Wow.
A lot of North Dakota is very passive aggressive and they won't say it to your face. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to come directly at me. It's going to happen behind me and stuff like that. But actually, I've been surprised by actually how much support I have gotten.
And it feels, and this is such a broad question, and the sport feels for the most part authentic. Given what you just said about the passive aggressiveness, but
the support feels authentic.
Yeah.
You were going to ask what's something that really surprised me.
Yeah, that's my flip side. What have you been surprised?
When I made my coming out post on Facebook and how much love and support I got in the comments and people cheering me on was amazing. So remember the bathroom debate issues? Like,
oh, it's ongoing.
It's that one, like politics is the worst, really has been the most hurtful thing is politics. And the current bill that's going through North Dakota legis right now, that's already passed the House that I know you know about. The anti-trans youth bill, athlete bill, just politics is what hurts. I don't know. It's hard is been some of the most painful experiences. And now that they're attacking our youth, I don't know. I can't. I want to leave the state. Yeah.
It's again, I use my social work cloak, and my reaction to that law is we have laws against that. We have laws against child abuse. You don't put somebody in power, any adult, which is any adult, in relationship to a child, and then allow them to intentionally hurt them. And that's it's a concept that I haven't gotten to stick with with anybody. I mean, that's what hits me the most, is that this is so flagrantly harmful, intentionally harmful to children, because it is very focused. It's under 18. And
Yeah, well, it originally wasn't. You knew that though, right?
yeah. But it's ended up, it's just got worse and worse as they amended it. So
Yeah.
that is, I go with you there. So was there anything, let me ask you this. Does this feel like an interview, Zayden? Is it turning into an interview? Okay.
Nope. Don't worry, I got questions in the back of my mind waiting for you. Well, one specifically.
Yeah. Because my two questions were kind of pertinent to the whole idea of other. I mean, so as you have come to terms, not terms, but you've come to realize who you are, and then recognizing the world's reaction to that. So has there been things that you've discovered about yourself that you've found? I like this concept, surprised by joy. Have you found something within yourself that you go, I didn't know that was there? And this is another piece of me. I mean, I hear so much of this coming through in the way you talk. But has there been any self-revealing kinds of things that you've discovered about Zayden?
I think that needed to happen for me before I could even transition. It's amazing to me how it's amazing to me how these kids come out at such a young age with their identity and any different places they are in the spectrums and all that stuff, because like I had to become so solid with loving myself first to be able to be comfortable to transition, because it has been terrifying for a number of reasons. A lot of it's political and how North Dakota wants to, like, I feel like the message is get out of our state. We don't want you here. You're not welcome. Like, I really feel that. And to not live in fear of that, we're going to get into politics. Trump, I believe, has paved the way for bigotry. Now that we've had a president who's been able to stand up there and say all these things, now it gave permission for everyone else to just, be a bigot and have no shame in it or whatever, like I was driving home the other day and I saw fuck Biden on the back of someone's truck. And I'm like, how can is that even legal? Like, can you have a swear word on your truck and stuff like that? It's just, I don't know. I feel like we like, as we seem to get closer to progress and laws or things or whatever, like, it's like the backlash also comes out harder. Do you know what I mean? And I get scared. The reason why I changed my ID was because when I went to a hotel, the guy called me sir and he, and he needed my ID to check me in or whatever. And then he started calling me ma'am. And I'm just like, oh my God. And like, I don't know why that scared me. Cause like, I feel like I've been outed. And then if someone knows, like, I'm afraid of getting attacked, because like that really happens, like people do crazy things out of fear. And that's what I think it is a fear response, because like, I'm different. You're something I don't understand. Like, I get that transgender can be really hard to understand. I think that it's hard for people to wrap their heads around something they can't relate to. Like, if you're a person who's, signed male at birth and you've been male and you're solid in that and you get that, and it's, like, why? And you're like, I would never change that. Well, of course, what's right for me doesn't mean it's right for you. I think we all have our individual journey, but like, not having that experience and being unable to relate, and then like societal beliefs that already we have a big, religious backing and following that will, I forgot I have religious trauma too, from being persecuted as a gay person at the time. This was back when I was 23 in a treatment program, Teen Challenge is what it was. And I'm going to go on so many tangents, Barry, just bear with me. This one was really bad. like it was it's a faith-based recovery program, and that's what they call it, secure for whatever. But really, you end up being in Bible school, and they make you believe in their evangelical God, and you have to follow like what they say, and they're like really like talking tongues and praying and all that stuff. And it was really really out there. And they told me I had to become straight in order to graduate. And granted, I'm there for alcohol, but I needed to become straight to graduate. And I would go and I'd do my research and be like, look, this is what the Bible says. Like, actually, there is no word for homosexuality in Greek and Hebrew. It's been added and it's been retranslated. And if you look in the context of the times, it's not what they're saying. And they wouldn't even let me like fight against them. And it was Kevin Kramer's wife, Chris Kramer, is who I was battling against. And then they brought the whole facility in front of me and just were like, you are detestable in the sight of God. It's an abomination. And they just like Bible beat me. Like, and I was bawling in front of 34 women. And I'm just crying. And some of the girls are like, can't you see what you're doing? Like, stop. And it was so, and so then they were going to start me in some kind of counseling to become straight, but I ended up leaving the program after being there for 10 months. And that
one,
that one has been really hard. I testified for the non-discrimination bill about that years ago, about that happening and how the state was funding discrimination, like it was, that one was really hard for me. So I get a little worked up over religious things because of how I've been so deeply, persecuted.
Oh, that. Yeah. That's conversion therapy. You were in conversion therapy.
Well,
under the pretense
of
under the pretense of treating your alcoholism. Mm. How old were you?
23.
God.
It's adult teen challenge. It was women and children at that time, so there was children there too. But
is this going on today?
Yep, it's in Mandan. They have the men and the women living in the same building. It's the old Heartview building, if you know what that is.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Wow. I don't, because and you've obviously done so much work on this. It's to call you a survivor is not fair because you've moved beyond. I mean, there's been much to survive. Huh?
I'm a thriver.
A thriver. There you go. A thriver. Good. Thank you. That's better. That's a better word.
No, I mean, I never knew I was a victim of things though either, Barry. You know what I mean? Like I never knew
that's probably so
I was a victim of sexual abuse. I never knew I was a victim of religious abuse. I didn't know I was in conversion therapy. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people, they don't know what kind of abuse they're experiencing because it's your normal and or you know what I mean? Or it can't be happening to you, or it has to be the obvious, like, it comes in so, I know this as a social worker, of like, like people, the different forms that it comes in and how you don't see it and you don't know. And like, I didn't know my gender identity was a thing for all my life, and like making sense of why I was an alcoholic. Well, I mean, we don't ever know why people are alcoholics. There's different theories out there. We don't really know, but obviously I was in pain. I tried killing myself when starting at the age of 12, I was suicidal. I was a frequent flyer of the psych ward for years. And I'm just like, what's wrong with me? Like, what's wrong with me? And like, no one could tell me. And I mean, really, I found out I was an alcoholic. So like, I couldn't get better until I got sober, like that became my solution because I was depressed and I felt alone and misunderstood. And I couldn't articulate that as a child. I was 12 years old. I can't tell you why I was feeling the way I was. And I would lie to my therapist at 12 years old because I started cutting, so I went to a therapist and she's like, well, my parents think I'm gay, but I'm not, like my parents may have said other things, but for whatever reason, as a child, I got the message that it's not okay to be gay. It's not okay to be trans, so we're not going to talk about that. So I'm just going to try to fit in society as I can and, go under the radar. But like, man, never being true to yourself either, like, is no way to live. Also, it's like, do you live in fear like of not being true to yourself, or you try to move past that and honor your true self? I do want to say this is totally I don't know why this came in my head. I like, some people really do, like a lot of religious people too, they bring into the God thing, into this trans thing. So as a person I mean, they're like, why God made you perfect, blah, blah, blah. We're going to, you know, that argument, or why would you, you know, that's unnatural or something. I have a really good, so as a person in recovery and working a 12-step program and finding my own definition of a higher power, which for me, my higher power is love. Like, I believe I was born in exactly the body I was supposed to be born in. I believe I was born to be in a female identifying body, and that I was supposed to go through this process and supposed to transition this way. I don't think I was put in the wrong body. But dang, when I look in the mirror now, am I like, holy crap, this is how I'm supposed to look? And it's so validating. Like, it's just, that's what's been, you know, you'd ask me, what did I find out about myself? What, as I transition and I see myself, it's like, it's so unbelievable. Like, when I was a little kid, I remember I lay in bed and like, I could lucid dream as a child. I could create my dreams, and I would be so excited to go to bed because I could create the dream world where I was a boy and like how I looked and like got to live that life like that. And now I'm like, oh my God, it's like I'm living a dream come true that I didn't even know was really my real dream in life, was to be this way. And because it's almost like I don't want to say that, because it makes me feel so different at the same time, and I don't like that, you know. Like, I still want to just be seen as a person, even though I am a transgender person, even though I was assigned female at birth and was a lesbian for most of my life, and will still identify as a lesbian, because dang it, I can identify however I want. I might call it something a little bit different now. I won't say, hi, I'm Zayden, I'm a lesbian, because I mean, that might be a little misconstruing, but you know, it was a part of my life. I can't, for me as a trans person, like, you know, I go up and I read about transgender stuff because I am no expert on my own community. You know what I mean? Like, I know a lot of people they call it dead name. Like, and my name was Susie. Like, that's who I used to be. I was formerly known as Susie. I don't call it my dead name because it's still an integrated part of me. You know, I feel like this has just been like all my lives, whatever, you just come in into being one of who I am today, which is now Zayden, you know. And like, but I reckon, you know, I don't, I can still see pictures of myself, and it's very strange to see pictures of myself as a female and like how I'm like, wow, I don't recognize that person, not because I looked so different, but because it's like, it was like a shell of myself. Like the rest of me was underneath there, but it was just this like other thing, like, but not completely out. And like having transitioning, it's like, I'm a butterfly now. Come let my wings fly. Come out of my shell. And I don't know, it's really cool. It's a trip, dude. Holy crap, to change sexes is a trip. When you look in the mirror, you're like a different person. Wow, is that crazy? It's crazy.
Well, and you know, what was so extraordinary was because I was able to participate in that through what you shared on Facebook. And you were, I mean, it appeared that you were very, very sharing. I don't know how I got in your Facebook circle. I don't know how you know, closed the circle was, but it struck me as being very, I mean, it was what you're just saying right now. It reminded me of that. It was very, it seemed like it was very liberating, that it was very celebratory. That's how it came across on Facebook. And you know, we got to be careful about how much, you know, I know you because we're friends on Facebook.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you do. And like, I just really like was ready to burst out of the shell of fear and just be like, if I'm going to transition, like, I need to not live in fear and to really put myself out there. Also, because I didn't meet my first transgender person until a year before I transitioned. Actually, it was, check this out. At my church, we did a series called God, Homosexuality in the Bible. That was the first transgender person I'd ever met. Like, I was like, wow. And so the reason why I'm saying that is because I realized that me coming out, I'm probably going to be the only transgender person that most people meet. And now that I look like this, I could probably hide under the radar as passing, as they say, because I look like a guy. And so if people don't know from before, you know, they just see me as a guy now. And so I, to be safe for myself, like I almost want to hide under that and just allow people to call me he all the time. But then my non-binary identity becomes invisible, and that happens a lot for people in the LGBT community who are like pansexual or bisexual. Once they become in what appears to be the heteronormative, then they become invincible because it's not so obvious that they're somewhere on whatever spectrum. So I felt like I had the opportunity to use that platform as an educational moment as well, to be like, this is who I am, this is my experience, like I'm probably going to be the only trans person, so let me open up a little bit. And I'm just, I'm an open person, and that's just kind of how I roll. So
Have you always been open, would you say?
Yep.
Is that you have?
Yep, I think since I was a little kid.
That's a true part of Zayden from beginning to now.
Yep, it really is.
So you can identify that is a foundational part of
my core self.
The core. Thank you.
Yep.
That's good.
Yep.
That's great.
Barry, so as we're talking about gender, and what I wanted to kind of ask you is, like, have you ever thought about your gender and why or how do you define yourself as a man, and what makes you a
man? So I grew up in a place and a time, sounds like a lead into a Star Wars movie. I grew up in small town North Dakota, in the 50s and 60s, where it was, my vision, it was very prescriptive what a man was and what a woman was, what a boy was and what a girl was. And especially growing up on a farm, boys do this and girls do this. And I do remember being kind of railing against that, like, well, that's not fair. I mean, if I want to stay inside and help mom cook, why can't I do that? Well, no, you have to be out doing farm stuff, boy things. And and so it was very much strongly prescribed. And I do remember being there were things that I identified that I really enjoyed that was not in that realm. I didn't like to hunt or trap. I wasn't particularly into baseball, but I liked to garden, and I was artistic, and I liked to read. Well, God, that just didn't fit in either. So when you're describing these things, I felt like I did a lot of fitting in because I did not want to be called a girl, because just because. And I have this really profound experience where I was so angry, and it was something where, when you talk about boys don't cry, and I still remember this. I mean, I thought I was by myself, so I was so angry that I was screaming in anger and crying and screaming in anger. I don't even know what caused it. Well, the part about that was, my uncle observed this, and so he chose a family gathering to recount my behavior when I was, and imitating me crying and screaming. And it was the most shameful thing I ever had experienced. It was just like, and because I was being weak and emotional, and observed being weak and emotional. So it's something where I went to therapy years later, I think especially around that incident. And so that's a really long answer too, but it was a very much of a prescribed kind of thing. And I think that I couldn't wait to get out to go to I went to college, and that to me was liberating, just to leave town and go to I went to the big city of Fargo to go to university.
Yeah.
But you know, that was kind of liberating. So, and it was a time, the other piece, of course, was the overlay was, I grew up always wondering if the Vietnam War was going to be still going on when I became of draftable age. I can remember being 12 thinking like, well, it's only 6 more years. You think this war will be going on? No, it won't go on for 6 more years. Well, it was going on. And because I was terrified of, you know, to me, going off to the army or the war was not a thing. There was nothing, it scared the hell out of me.
Right.
So that kind of overlaid my whole life. I always talk about 2 weeks before my high school graduation with Kent State, you know, where the students were shot dead by the guardsmen. And I just remember being like, as much as I wanted to go off into the world, I was terrified by it because it seemed like a really dangerous place. So that gets kind of away from the gender thing. But I don't think I was gender normative either. But I think I was in such a suppressive environment. I mean, the idea of even pushing up against that was not even thinkable. It just was, you fit in. You really do fit in.
You know how you would define gender for yourself today?
How would I define it?
Yeah.
I do he, him, his. I do think that I do believe I'm a male with heavy feminine inclinations.
What are feminine inclinations? I'm gonna make you define your gender for me if you don't realize that's what's happening right
Well,
now.
and that's probably good. I've never been forced to do this before. So,
well, I mean, you want to know what my non-binary is in my gender, so
yeah.
you to participate as well.
Well, I do feel like I am in much more, I really am in touch with my feelings a lot, which is not, you know, particularly, I think it's kind of a liberating way to live one's life.
Right. So why do we call that feminine though?
I don't know.
Like, why is that a feminine quality?
Yeah.
That's a human quality, isn't it? But yet we make it feminine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Oh, it is. And Zayden, you know, and the other part is that whole emotional thing. I mean, I realized it hit me most, I think, when my mom died, and I realized, boy, I did a good job suppressing that whole sadness and crying thing. This should be a time to be sad and to be crying. And it was gone. It had been stamped out, and that seemed as sad as not being able to emote at an appropriately sad situation.
You were conditioned to believe that it was, you know, shameful.
Yeah.
To have emotions, like that's so sad, and to be weaker to have emotions, you know, like, and somehow that's also feminine, and then also makes you less than too. Like that's so unfair for anyone to ever have to experience that. We're humans, we're supposed to have emotions, you know, like we should have spaces where we feel safe, you know, and to be able to feel those things, because I can tell you as a person in recovery of what it's like of trying to bottle down those emotions and not feel, because that's what I was doing my whole life as an alcoholic, you know, I was running from feeling, you know, and trying to find anything to just
yeah. So and it's interesting, the things that stick in my mind, you know, like I still remember being at my daughter's school conference, and the teacher made this up, and I don't think she had no value what she said. I put value on it, because she said, wow, this is a very unique couple. It's kind of like, or maybe I had it as, wow, you're a weird couple, because So my wife is pharmacist and in hard sciences, and I'm in the liberal arts. So I was the one talking about how much I loved the fact that my daughter was a reader and a writer and loved artwork and did all these things. And my wife was talking about hard numbers and science and facts. And the teacher said, wow, that's, she didn't say weird. She said, this is very unique, where the father comes with these qualities and the mother comes with these qualities. Like kind of you flip them around. And you know, I was fine with that, but I did have that moment of, ooh, maybe I should be more scientific.
Right? Because they've even genderized that. It blows my mind.
I
All the
know.
things that, how much we've assigned genders to, and who you're supposed to be. Like, how dare anyone tell you who you are supposed to be as Barry? You know, well, if you say you're Barry and you're a man, now you better be scientific and not cry. See, I don't want to go through that. So I don't want to identify as male, so you can't do that to me. So I'm non-binary. So there we go.
And I celebrate that. I mean, I really watch children and young people. You're not a child.
I'm a young person, 35, right? That's
yeah, you're a very youthful 35.
Yeah.
When you said 35, it's like, well, really? Okay.
I got gray hair.
Yeah, I do too.
Where?
I have to tell you this. I went to this. The usual person who back when I cut my hair, and I went to have my hair cut, and the person that I usually go to wasn't there, so I went. So I think his name was Rufus. Said, "Well, I'll you know, if you don't mind, I'll cut your hair." And he said, "So how do you want it cut?" I said, only cut off the white part." And he was just like, "What? What?" So anyway, but it is something, because the questions you're pressing on me, Zayden, are uncomfortable, because it confronts things that I've confronted at certain levels, but in other ways I just like put them away again and thought, okay, fine, you know, we'll just not deal with that. And maybe in some ways I was going to say a luxury, but it's not a luxury not to deal with what's your basic core set. I mean, you've had to confront it both with your yeah, well,
I didn't have to. I chose to eventually. You know what I mean? Like I chose to confront those things.
Yeah.
Because like what happened when I also got sober was, like spirituality is going to come into this. You know, like I when I was finally ready to make recovery the most important part of my life, like I had something else come inside of me, and it was like this feeling of like I am taken care of. Like I had this like feeling that everything was going to be okay, even though I was so full of fear. And in the psych unit, I was in the psych unit the last time I got drunk, because that's where I have to go to quit drinking, because it's that bad. I'm a really bad alcoholic, Barry. I mean, like really bad. Like the impossible types, the ones that keep coming into the hospital and the psych units, and they're like, what more can we do for you? We sent you to every treatment. You've been there how many times? Like how many more? You know, I'm that one. So I was in the psych unit and we had group that day, and they wanted us to write down positive affirmations on the cards. And I wrote these down because they just felt so true to me at that moment. And they're still true today. And I still have them hanging up in my bedroom. And that's, I will stay sober. I am completely taken care of by God, and I can face all my fears. And so I work hard to face all my fears. Like when I'm afraid of something, I feel like I know that's something I got to do, because I've been running, you know, like I said, I've been running from my fears, and that is getting me nowhere but staying stuck. And like, I found there's so much joy and growth, and there's so much joy and uncomfortability, because that's where growth happens. Like, you know what I mean? If I just stay comfortable in my whatever space and, you know, don't go out here, then I can stay safe. But then I stay exactly where I am, and no, I don't go any further. Do you know what I mean? So like, I see pain chips as accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, not pain chips. It's a long form of the Serenity Prayer. accepting hardships as the pathway to peace. I know that when something hard comes along my way, that this is an opportunity for growth. So like, man, like being trans is almost like another like quest that I got to accept. Like I shall accept this quest, and I I will go and I will overcome my fears. Like, you know what, like it does. It's a journey, man. And like I keep growing and I keep learning. And you know, my motto of life that I use all the time, and actually we use this at Q Space, we end it every day, is love is always the answer. Like I feel like the only thing that can overcome fear is love. And like that's how I understand what people call God, is this love, because I think it can conquer all things. We've seen it with hashtag love wins, and you know, so it's just it's how I try to live my life, and I hope that I can be an example of love to people. Yeah, I try anyway. I'm not perfect. I fall short a lot, but then I always got somewhere to keep going, keep growing, keep going. So yeah, let's get a little uncomfortable so we can grow a little bit. How about that?
Yeah, no, I subscribe, but
Awesome.
I have to observe. So at that moment, Zayden, you were transcendent as you described that. Your eyes closed. You moved into a sphere as you were. I mean, there was something really beautiful about that as you were describing that, and you created that for yourself, right? You went there. You chose to go there in this moment on a Zoom call. God forbid. Yeah, it's so, you know, so many questions, Zayden, and I think about the questions here implies kind of you mentioned about modeling love and maybe that's as far as it needs to go. I think of how, was there someone, so I see you, and not to put a big burden on your shoulders, as you know, you're the person that kids can say, I know a trans person. I know Zayden. Or at any age, I guess adults. Share with you, Zayden, I remember the first trans person I met. And I was well into middle adulthood.
Yep.
And it was transformative for me, because up to that point, this is where I keep going back to relationships. And Colleen, God rest her soul, was so generous, because up to that point, you talk about I couldn't get it. I could not get it, because all of my learning was book stuff.
Right.
And I just didn't get it. And then getting to know her and finding out her story, the parts that she was willing to share. And we had the luxury of being in becoming friends over a long period of time. So it wasn't a sit down and tell me everything, and you know, so anyway, so the point is, it was not it just hasn't, it didn't present itself to me for a really, really long time. Maybe I met someone and I didn't know, or I didn't choose to interact, or I was scared. Yeah, to walk up to someone. I'm not sure where I'm going with that.
I want to ask you something about that though, actually. So, because you had said that you just didn't understand, right? Kind of like the being trans or something, like, or you never heard about that. So like, when you say you didn't understand, do you now understand? And what do you understand if you do? Because here's where I'm going with this. Before you even answer that, I want to somehow get to a message of like, you know what, you don't need to understand to just treat people nicely. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to understand, because you're not trans. You know what I mean? Like, you can only go so far for you. Just like I won't understand what it's like to be black, because I'm not black, and I won't be black, or a different skin color of any point. But I can relate to people of I know we had talked about not saying majority and minority. I don't know what else to use sometimes. So someone will have to please educate me on that if anyone else sees this. But like, I can relate to minorities for being different and not fitting in and kind of having some of that experience and not being, as some of that. So, it's for us to try to understand everyone. I don't know if that would take a long time. I don't know. I don't know. So what I would propose, but I don't know what the words are yet, is what can we do to come together still, without having to understand someone's experience, but just understanding, here's what I understand is that we are all humans. And when it comes down to it, with the basics, we are not that different. Like, we all want to be a part of something and to feel accepted and loved and welcomed and to have a community. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have to make it that complex to know that at the end of the day, like, we all like bleed the same color, I guess. Or if you believe in a God, maybe come from the same one, but that could be controversy too. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I feel like what separates us is so small compared to what connects us. And you have talked about relationships, you know what I mean? And like, that seems to be an important, there's something really important to that. And I think maybe it's not understanding, but maybe we can have a connection. Because we could sit here and figure out, we could point all the differences out, or you know what? I'm pretty sure we could find a lot in common at the same time. So why, like, really, I believe that we are one, and we're supposed to be here for each other. We're not meant to not to be alone or to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I have different spiritual, I don't know if they're different spiritual understandings, but like, I really believe in like human connection, I guess. And that's what we're here for, and to help each other and to be there for one another. And I think those are values that almost anyone can get on board with, So I don't know. Hashtag North Dakota nice.
That's no, and that is a really, I loved how you phrased that, because that is so accurate. I want to be able to, with any individual, the goal would be to move from a prescribed perception or even a caricature of them to them being a real, living, breathing, loving human being, and connectedness is the best way to do that. And so often we block the connectedness. We either, because we think they're so different, or they're so scary, or they're so evil, or whatever we throw on that we just say, I can't go there. And
like, we miss their humanness and we see them as something separate. When like we're just, no, we're all human, we're all same race, actually.
I've never known why there was one time somebody asked, because I've always been attracted to diversity in whatever term, however we describe that. And I do remember back when I first went to NDSU, diversity was not very prevalent. It's still not, but it was, in terms of race, there was the International Club, and I was intrigued by this, because and most of the people that seemed to be a part of the International Club at that time were from India and Pakistan. And I just remember thinking like, oh, I want to join, because they were saying anybody can join this club. And I was like, oh, I just really like to join this. And I'd see what I thought were international club members on campus, and I'd be like, oh, I just want to go up there and get to know them. But, I was just like, it was just this little meek country boy that just could not overcome at that point. But at that point, I still remember kind of standing off in the distance going, I really would like to get to know you, but I don't know how to do it. So to me, I use that as the mantra, that if we're at least introspective enough, that that fear, which then connotes differentness, which then connotes anger and hatred toward other. I mean, it's just all complex. But to get past that initial type of thing,
Right.
because you'll find out that people will, when you go up to them, they won't go like, whoa, what are you coming up to me? They'll go, oh, that's beautiful. You reached out and are very reciprocal. So
Yeah. Super
is
cool.
there anything, Zayden, that you were prepared to talk about that we didn't?
You know what's funny? Like I had been thinking about this too, and I don't know what I was thinking about this before this because it's not coming to mind now, and I don't know. I think it went exactly the way it was supposed to. You know
I
what I
would
mean? Like
too.
I didn't foresee anything like this coming out. Like I ended up sharing. Like I thought I was gonna be trying. I don't know what I thought, but I think it. I was way
Okay,
too.
it worked. We had a
Yeah,
conversation, in other
yeah.
words.
That's exactly what happened. We get the goal was conversation. We definitely had it. Amy, poor thing, will have to sit through an hour of trying to figure out 3 minutes, 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, Aiden. It's one of those where I would like to have more of these, and
Yeah,
you know, it would be, um, I really do appreciate you. I've moved beyond being in awe of you, and now just truly appreciate your who you are. And thank you for being a part of my world.